So the topic for today is Introduction to Surveying, your first lecture for this course. So let's have the introduction. So let's define first what surveying is. So surveying can mean the following. First, it's the science of determining the dimensions and contour of the Earth's surface by measurement of distances, directions, and elevations. It could also just mean staking out lines and grades needed for the construction of buildings, roads, dams, and other structures. And finally, it also includes the computation of areas, volumes, and other quantities, as well as the preparation of necessary maps and diagrams. So all of these activities are under the scope of surveying. So your measurement, computation, contour maps, and all of that, that's surveying. So based on all of those definitions, the process of surveying is in three stages, namely, first stage, taking a general view. So we need to obtain an overall picture of what is required before any type of survey work is undertaken. So for example, in land surveying, which is what we're usually doing, this is achieved during the reconnaissance study. Okay, so taking a general view. The second stage is observation and measurement. So this stage constitutes the measurement to determine the relative position and sizes of natural and artificial features on the land. So that's already staking out what your area is or figuring out what your lot looks like. And then the final stage is the presentation of data. So the data collection in any survey must be presented in a form which allows the information to be clearly interpreted and understood by others. So this presentation may be in the form of your written report, bills of quantities, data sheets, drawings, and in land surveying, again, that's your maps and plans showing the features on the land. So for us, or for you guys as students, I'll have you create your written reports, which is done during your fieldwork. So that's surveying. We also have the different classifications of survey. So it's classified by three methods. So first, classified based on the nature of the field. So nature not meaning your forestry, okay? It's a different nature. Next, classification based on the purpose of the survey. And final classification based on the instruments used. So let's start with classifications based on nature of the field. So the first type of survey under that is your land surveys. And then under land surveys, you also have the following. So first is your topographical survey. So the first type of surveying that we have. It's carried out to determine the natural features of a country, such as hills, valleys, rivers, lakes, wooded areas, etc., and the artificial features such as roads, railways, towns, villages, canals, buildings, etc. So as you can see on the right, you have your topographical map, which is something that you guys will also do, hopefully, under this course. So I'll have you create a topography map. So based on just the definition of topography, topography is the arrangement of the natural and artificial physical features of an area. So a detailed description or representation on a map of the natural and artificial features of an area is what your topographical survey is. Okay? So let's say if we perform topographical survey on a large scale, these surveys were meant to show elevation and landforms not listed on traditional maps and surveys. So topographical surveys on a larger scale are more comprehensive. The next type of land survey is cadastral surveys. So cadastral surveys are carried out to determine the boundaries of fields, houses, estates, and other properties. So on the right, we have what we call a cadastral map. So a cadastral map is a comprehensive land recording of the real estate or real properties bounds or boundaries. Okay, so topographical survey, physical, artificial, natural and artificial features of land, cadastral surveys, boundaries of properties. And then the last type is your city survey. So these are carried out for the construction of roads, parks, water supply, sewers, and other constructional works for any developing township. So under surveying, for this, or under city surveys, we have making maps, laying out plots and streets, constructing streets, pipelines, sewers, buildings, establishing reference points and benchmarks. Perhaps if you looked around the streets, you'll see benchmarks, so those columns that has numbers on them, so STA for station 001, things like that. Locating property lines and topographic survey as well. So those are all under city survey. So they can overlap. So topographical survey can serve as a city survey as well. So these are all just based on nature of the field. So meaning one is for artificial, natural landforms, or the other is for property lines, and then this is for the city. So those are your surveys under land surveys based on the nature of the field. Since we have land surveys, we also have hydrographic surveys, which we won't really go into. We're more concerned with land surveys for this course. But to give you a definition, hydrographic surveys are the surveys which deal with the measurement of water bodies like seas, rivers, lakes, gulfs, etc., for the purpose of navigation, development of port facilities, prediction of tides, and determination of mean sea level. And so this is for your marine engineers, marine surveys, or hydrographic surveys. So that's it for classification based on nature of field. The next classification is based on purpose of the survey. So we have a lot. We have a lot of purposes for the survey, or purposes for surveying. So let's discuss each one by one. First, engineering or project surveys, which is what we'll do as engineers. So the surveys which are carried out to collect data for planning, design, construction of an engineering project, like highways, railways, irrigation canals, water supply, sewage disposal, tunnels, dams, reservoir, etc., are called engineering or project surveys. So everything we do for the construction of a building or structure for a city or landscape is engineering survey. Next, military or defense surveys. These are surveys which are carried out for preparation of maps in areas of strategic or military importance. Next, mine or explorations or exploratory survey. These are surveys which are carried out for exploration of hidden mineral wealth behind the surface of the ground. For example, your coal, copper, gold mines, etc. They're all mine surveying. Okay, so mining is also a type of surveying. Next, geological surveys. Surveys carried out to ascertain the composition of the Earth's crust. For example, different strata of rocks of the Earth crust, and those are your geological surveys. Similar to that, we have archaeological surveys. These surveys are carried out to prepare maps of ancient culture, your antiquities, and such. So geological and archaeological are different, even though they have something to do with the ground. Geological, composition of the earth; archaeological, ancient culture. Okay, so they're different. Next, we have marine or navigation survey. So similar to your hydrographic survey. But for marine surveys, these surveys are carried out to determine the position of harbors and the courses of ships and such. So this is more specific than your hydrographic survey. And then lastly, reconnaissance survey, a preliminary survey to inspect the area before the actual detailed survey to ascertain how the survey works can be executed in the best possible way. So by definition of reconnaissance, that also extends to your reconnaissance survey, where you just stake out an area before you actually do something on that area. And then we have the last type of survey. Does anyone remember what's the last classification of survey? First is nature of field. Second is based on purpose. What's the third one? Anyone? Please answer in the chat. Very good, William and John. Carlo. Arreglado and Fiscal. It's instrument, classification based on the instrument. So first we have your chain surveys. This is very old. You don't really see this much anymore. But chain surveying obviously uses chain or tape, as you can see in the figure. It's used to determine linear measurements, since you only have a chain. And then it's suitable for surveys of small extents only, and then for open ground. And most of the time, it's used to define boundaries of a piece of land or to take some details. So again, for chain surveying, only linear measurements are taken, so only distances between points and such. Next, we have compass surveying. So compass surveying is a type of surveying in which the directions of surveying lines are determined with a magnetic compass. Okay, so that's why it's called compass surveying. So we get direction and bearing, and then we also get direction and bearing of lines because it's necessary for plotting the line on paper. Okay. Why is there a T there? Okay, so generally, a compass is used to run traverse lines. So a combination of lines going at different directions. Next, we have plane table surveying. So in normal surveying, field observations are taken first and then you plot it in the office. Even when you do your field work, most of the time we're doing that. So you're gonna do your measurements and then plot it out when you return to the classroom or wherever else, the library and such. But for plane table surveying, field observations and plotting are already done simultaneously. So plane table surveying is a graphical method of survey in which we don't wait to plot it out. We do it while we record or while we gather the measurements that we need. So the geometrical conditions of site are drawn in a map or map sheet using plane table and alidade. That's why we call it plane table surveying. So this is your plane table. This is your alidade. So an alidade is used for establishing your line of sight. So line of sight is a term that you'll hear later on in our topics for surveying. For now, we won't discuss that yet. And then within your plane table surveying, topographic details are also arranged in the map. Okay. And then finally, we have theodolite surveying. So theodolite is what we'll do most of the time because we'll use a theodolite or total station. So theodolite is used for both horizontal and vertical measurements in the form of angles. If you remembered, our instruments like chain, compass, and level only give one form of measurement. Either just an angle, just a bearing, or just a linear measurement only. Theodolite can give you both. And then it works on the principle of optics and it's used for defining angles, unlike compass, not only gives bearings. So relating that to your plane table is simpler and cheaper than a theodolite, but you can only use plane table for small scale survey. Anything that's medium or larger size, we should use a theodolite. Okay, and that's your classification of survey based on instrument use, and that's also the end of the introduction to surveying. Do you have any questions so far? Please answer in the chat. If you don't have any questions, please type none or clear to let me know that you guys understand the topic. Okay, no questions. Thank you. Since you don't have questions, that's the end of that.